Hey guys, it's watercolor day. Yeah, I'm sitting in my office up here at the university, and so it's a little bit of a change of venue, but I'm taking advantage of the fact that yesterday we had a high school visit day where we had a bunch of art students coming from the regional area, and we were doing demos and showing them the facilities and everything, and I was doing a watercolor demo. I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I shot two watercolor demos for the high school students yesterday and posting it for my watercolor tutorial for this week. So it's a little different setup. I'm working with a document camera on a smaller table, and I'm interacting with students, and I think it'll be something interesting you might want to hear and see. But I'm also posting it because the watercolor, the demo that I did, turned out really nice. So I hope you enjoy this, and I'll bounce back in at the end of the video. Real quick, how many have worked with watercolor? Oh, good. Okay, you know the states, right? Wet on wet, wet on dry, dry on wet, and what did I miss? Salt.
Yeah.
There's salt and sand. So anyway, really watercolor is all about the state, the wetness or the dryness of your brush, the wetness or the dryness of the paper, or the saturated or unsaturated state of your brush. So there's a lot of various things you kind of juggle with watercolor, and that's what I'll kind of hopefully do and demo, and we'll get this little bird done real quick within the time frame of an hour. Is it 9 to, I think it's an hour, or is it an hour and a half? So typically, and I'm working with this bird. Does anybody know what kind of bird that is? It looks like some sort of a finch or something, doesn't it? So I chose this mainly because of the range of colors, and they're not terribly saturated. We have a neutral gray background. We got some browns in here. We got some grays, you know, these grays, and then you got all this little fine fussy detail. And then look at this, all that nice mottled soft color right in there. So that's what we're going to try to do real quick. I'm working with I think this is a Winsor Newton Cotman set of colors, and it's been a while since I worked with this. I'm just going to get some colors going here, and I'm going to kind of create this this background, this neutral background with a range of colors, and the state of the saturation here. I'm going to be working with about a T consistency on this initial background, and it's way too blue, so I'm going to throw a little of this earth tone in there, and that's going to kind of neutralize the colors and get it down to that kind of a purpley gray right there. So man, that's an ugly, you know, mixing mud's the easiest thing in the world, isn't it? So anyway, we get a pretty good puddle here, but I don't think it's quite enough. I'm going to drop a little more in there and practice. Now you can have a pretty nice set with lots of colors and this and that, but if you're on a budget, you don't have to have a big color set. All you need is what colors? Yeah, that's right, your primaries. So essentially red, blue, and yellow, and then have a shade in there, a black, a Payne's gray or something. So I'm just going to come in, and this is wet on dry paper, so I'm just going to drop it in here. Got a quick little fast thing. I just unloaded my brush, add a little more water into it, so I'm affecting the saturation right there. I'm going to keep a live edge on it, and if I want things to travel, I'm going to lift it up and have a gravity assist, just like they do in the space program, right? We're using gravity to aid us and get us to that point. So now this is a student grade paper. This is a Canson paper. So don't think you always have to have the absolute best, especially if you're just kind of learning and figuring things out. You can work with a student grade to no problems whatsoever, and I'm again just kind of blocking it in. I'm working with a flat brush. I'm a flat brush guy, so it's just the way I learned to paint with watercolor, and you can kind of see the cool effects that I'm doing. And wherever I let the thing dry too much, I'm just going to kind of work around it, and we just get in there like that. All right, so we've already really kind of blocked the colors in the background. That's all I need. I'm just going to soften this edge up just with adding some water right there, so you can see the nice transitions. You can see wherever I put a brush stroke, you can see some nice interactions with the colors right there. So the background's done. Now if I wanted to, I could get fancy, I guess. We could just get a little drop of water or two and just kind of drop them on there for some textures, and it'll do some pretty magical things right there. So now with that drying, we got, ooh, look at those nice spreads. Ooh, don't even need salt, huh? Just water. All right, so now we're going to block the bird. We got the browns, we got the blues, we got those yellow ochres, and we got that branch, that gnarly looking branch. So I'm going to go ahead, and I think I'll get a slightly smaller flat. This is like a 1/2 inch flat. It's a good watercolor brush. I really always have like this. I'm going to just get a little bit of that burnt sienna. I got to hurry because I know the time is ticking. All right, so let's just get in here and we're going to block some color here. This is a tea consistency again. I don't want to get too heavy-handed with the colors. I can always glaze in more. There's just a hint of it right down in here. All right, so just really creating a base color profile on this bird that we can then add a little more into it. I'm going to throw a little bit up there. His beak's going to be a multitude of colors. Get a little more blue there. Oops, boy, that went blue, didn't it? All right, so I'm going to throw a little bit of that just down here. Just create that nice little cape right there, and it's all wet, so we're going to have some nice fuzzy edges. I'm just going to feather that out a little bit. We got a big puddle right there, Mr. Bead beading up right there. If you don't want that to happen, you can tip it up, let gravity do a little work for you, or you can just sop it up. Unload your brush on some paper, paper towel, and that'll be good. Now let's get some of that yellow ochre.
Is it cold press or hot press?
This is it's not a hot press, it's a cold press paper, but it is that Canson grade. It's a fast paper too. I do a lot of YouTube tutorials and things, and I like it mainly because it dries fast. I hate filming for 2 hours. It just drives me bananas. So I'm going to just throw a little bit of that. It's really hot right down in here. Right, come around. Oh yeah, I'm going to switch to a different color for the little footies. All right, again, I'm just going to feather that out up into the blues. Nice soft transitions. Look at that. Can't beat that. I'm going to throw a little of that blue onto the branch. All right. And I'm going to quickly switch over. I'm going to get some of that burnt sienna again. A little thicker mixture this time. It's still in the tea state, but it is thicker. I'm just going to throw some of that right down here. And the cool thing about this is you got to learn to let go of control. And that's a hard thing to do. So I started doing watercolor mainly because I'm a recovering photorealist. So I wanted a looser style. All the artists and people I liked looking at in magazines, trade magazines, or online with YouTube, I always liked the loose styles, the impressionistic styles and things like that. So, all right, let's see here. I got a little bit of that over. I'm going to get a little hotter yellow there. Drop it in there. This is getting a little closer to a coffee consistency, so it's a little more than tea, and there's just a smidge of purple in there too. So you get really good at kind of recognizing, you know, a color profile on this. So at this point, this is pretty much dried, or should dry to a point I can start working on it. Nope, hang on. I'm looking for, what's the right color? Nope, that's my Payne's Gray. I think this is my burn umber. Yeah, all right, cool. I'm gonna get some of that blue. I'm looking for that brownish green. A little more of that. All right, there we go. Get a little more of that. There we go. I did all that work just for that tail right there. All right, so there's a nice highlight edge around it. So I'm not going to paint right up to the edge, but I'm going to feather it with just water. So it's going to have a nice soft transition from color to the edge, right like that. So right now we're at this point that this has been blocked in. We've covered most of the subject matter that's in this, and we're going to now start kind of coming through and ramping up the saturation in bigger shapes and adding a little more structure to the piece. So I'm going to come back over, get some of this color, onto this burnt sienna right there, getting a thicker mixture of that color. Got some nice transitions. I'm looking around. You got to keep an eye out, because if I hold it just right, you might see the sheen in there. Those are wet spots. All right, so I'm going to try to avoid those. There's still some wet spots up around the bird's beak and right in this area, but I think back here where I want to start saturating it, I can get some of this really dense color to come in and do something. So I'm working with a round, a small round now, and I'm just going to bring it down and around into a more controlled shape. So wet on dry is always going to be a sharp edge, all right? So wherever you put it, it's going to stay there. Wet on wet is when you can get some nice transitions into soft color blends, is when the paper's wet and your pigment is coming in on top of it, and you can get all sorts of cool things happening. All right. I'm also going to get a little bit of that Payne's Gray again. Where's it at? There it was. And we'll do a little work on that top of the head and under the bird's chin right in here. All right, so we'll just drop, let me get a little bluer. It needs a little smidge of some blue in there. That's a smidge, all right. All right, here we go. I'm looking for wet spots. All right, there we go. I'm just going to come in, and then I wanted it real dark under that beak, and then I'm just going to feather it out with some directional strokes. It's going to start coming down into here as well. It's not going to be quite as dense, but we'll just fake it out. I do want some strokes in this case, just for the thing to read properly. All right, gets a little grayer, so I need to find a little more of that color right there. Okay, so right in here, I'm going to soften that up. Unloaded my brush, adding a little more moisture to it. I'm going to throw a little more right up in here. How am I doing time-wise? All right, I think we're doing pretty good.
You still have 40 minutes.
All right, so cool. I'm just playing with colors now. I'm just trying to get some interesting color transitions, and I'm trying to protect some of this area, but I'll probably have to come back in and rescue some of the highlights with some white, opaque white. So there we go. All right, and then there's a real dark spot right down in here, right along the bottom edge of the bird. Is that his? Yep. We'll throw that right up around here. All right, so, and it's really a similar color to what was happening here. Needs a little more density. All right, now we're cooking. All right. Needs a little more right down in here. All right, I'm just going to feather it out again. Oh, I see a spot where I need some intense browns. If I can do this without sticking my hand in a puddle. All right, right in here. Cool. All right, now, as that is kind of drying everywhere, up here I'm going to come after this branch, and I'm just going to make it look woodish. I'm not worried about all the little lichens and everything on there. I just want it to be something that reads properly as a branch. And I'm doing a lot of dry brush right now, so it's unloading the brush on the paper and really keeping my angle of my brush pretty flat like that. And since essentially this branch is a cylinder, I'm just going to work on both edges of the branch with some strokes. And I do want to see strokes on this kind of a mark right here. So I don't want it to be too soft. All right, so let's look here. Where else are we going? I think I'm looking for wet spots again. All right, I think what I'll do is switch to a slightly smaller brush. It's probably the smallest brush I'll work with, a number 1 brush. And again, these aren't expensive brushes. All right, I'm going to mix up a fairly thick consistency of this Payne's Gray. I need to get a little more of that blue in it as well. So a nice, cool, dark color, fairly thick. And I'm just simply going to draw some structure onto it. So, for instance, this twig, this branch can kind of have some structure in here. So I'm just drawing with wet media right now. There we go. I'll maybe even throw a little knot right there. Just, I'm faking it now, right? Totally faking it. There we go. Hey, that reads pretty good. All right, there we go. All right. And right up here where the bird's feet are, it's going to be darker, shadows, all that good stuff. So I'm just going to get a little more structure right there. All right, and I know there's some darkness right up under here. I'm just going to draw a little structure right there. And we'll come around, looking for that wet spot. And now I just come in, I'm just going to start finding all the structure. And I'm going to come up here. I'll do that dark hood right up here first, along that beak. Right in through here, right around that eye. Got that little spot right there. Now, the contrast, that's when all the fun starts to happen. You start adding all the structure and the contrast into this. The bird really starts coming to life. Alright, there we go. I'm trying to leave that little highlight lip right around the eye. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. And I need to get a little more density right up under here. And I just need to define that shape a little better. So, and again, now the strokes are coming into play. They are important. Alright, so I'm just going to create a series of marks that I can use later if I need to define them better. Alright, so now we'll just keep building that out. Alright, so it's all about the marks right now. I'm going to soften this up, get a little thinner mixture. I'm going to come back over here on this wing, add a little more of that modeling, get a little more of that texture to come along this edge, right down along in here. Ooh, hey, that's a lot. Soften it up. There we go. Okay, there we go. Now, all right, is everything drying? It's feeling pretty good. And I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to kind of use a little line work to add some structure and definition on the side of this bird. Like I said, I wanted to fatten him up a little bit. I didn't have him drawn quite right. So, alright, we'll come over on this side, do the same thing, and we're just building out the bird. Alright, cool. How we doing? Carrying along there. Alright, I'm going to quickly do a little work on the foot. I'm going to just draw that out real quick. There's the one claw right there. Get this other toe. Comes across, comes out and around. Get some cross contour marks. I'm just drawing right now. And we'll get this other one. Throw that claw out. There we go. Edge of the board. Perfect. Alright. I want to structure this side up a little better. Nice crunchy branch texture there. Throw a little more right up under here. Let's draw this. We'll get this one real quick. Here we go. This is wet on dry. Hopefully, if I've found the right spots. Get that claw just right. There we go. Got the other little toe coming around. Got the claw pokes out there. There we go. All right. Get the back side. All right. And we'll throw another little spot right there. All right. That's drawing nicely up there. Gives me time. I can come around. All right. I'm going to get the top edge. Broken line, I am using line just for definition along the transition from the bird into the background, but it's not a solid line, and it's even almost symbolic texture as well. So it just adds a nice pop from the background. There we go. All right, so we are coming along pretty good. Throw that in there like that. There we go. All right. Swing back around over here. Get a little darker, thicker mixture. And I'm going to hit that eyeball again. With any luck, it's going to start popping. All right. And I'm going to come around. I'm going to start building out that little shape right around the eye, and then it transitions. There we go. All right, same thing right up here. It needs a little more saturation. I need to build that beak a little bit. And right here, let's see, it comes right up in here like that. Perfect. There we go. All right, now we'll just kind of build out. Oh, sorry. I'm just going for the pattern. It's in the feathers there. Throw a few more out here. And if you look at it, they start to kind of become these little shapes like that too, these little half moon shapes. And if you get the pattern right, it doesn't matter if it's accurate to the photo, it reads right. Okay. That top of the head needs a little more blue in it. And right in here needs more blue. Okay. All right, what other fun stuff? I'm going to throw, oops, I just hit a wet spot. I want to do a little more out here. Need to pull this down. Just slowly transition, less and less marks. All right, so I really do have a lot of the structure in place. And the next fun thing we can do is we can start coming back now and start glazing a little more intense color. So I'll go back to my slightly bigger round right there. And I do need some of this blue. Not a real thick mixture, but maybe more of an ultramarine. That's what this is right there. And I'm just going to glaze a little more color. I do feel a wet spot right up here on the bird's head. We're going to throw more of it right in through here. And I'm just kind of squinting my eyes and looking at the colors on the bird and just dropping it in as fields of color. And get some more of it down through here. That. I'm going to throw a little more of that yellow orange here onto the beak, because that's a really intense spot right there. I'm going to throw it right in there. Cool. And again, this area, this is pretty intense too. There we go. I'm going to glaze in a pretty aggressive yellow right in through here, right around the foot. Whoop. All right, cool. Let's get some more brown. That's intense. We'll throw a little more of it right in here. That's pretty cool. And I need more of that right here on the bird foot. There we go. Get a little more of that on the foot. Over here, around here, over there. All right. And now I'm going to add a little more of that into the branch. All right. A little more density right under here as well. And all we're doing is really trying to create a sense of form, texture. There we go. Soften that out a little bit. There we go. And because watercolor is transparent, anytime I put a color on top of a previous color, you create a new color. So the biggest trick is to manage when you want to see strokes as opposed to when you don't want to see strokes. And if you're really kind of, you know, we could even counterbalance. Here, let's do this. We'll take some of that brown that's up here on the head. We need a little of it out here. Let's just throw a little drab of it out here in the background. What? That's crazy. There we go. Look at that. That's pretty sweet. All right, I need some more purples. I see some purple spots that I think, if I close my eyes just right, we're going to have some purples in here. And if not, we're just going to fake it. We're back to faking it. All right. I need some over here. All right, so you got to be careful. It starts getting muddy when you start working with all these contrasting complementary colors. So, but that's all right. If you don't risk it, you'll have a boring looking thing. We'll throw a little bit of it right out here too. There we go. Throw a little more on the beak, right in through here. Up a little more. More on that top of the beak right there. And right under there. Cool. And back to my Payne's gray. A little more color there. And let me get that up. It's really wet there. I might have to wait. I'm going to get this right there. All right. I'm looking, sorry. Just trying to get, that was a claw there. This comes around, And then the claw comes in right there. There's the claw right there. And right there. Boom, boom. Throw that rock. Need a deep hole there. There we go. There we go. Alright. This needs a little structure down here. I'm just going to suggest a little more of the feather edge with the dark. Get a really dark one right there. And I'm going to pull a little more of that up here. Switching to a slightly smaller, I need a little bit of this action happening right up here. And I'm going to pull a little bit of it out here, so little fine marks right in through here. There's kind of a transition in that color with the browns. We'll throw some of that right there. That's really wet right there. Can't do anything there. Alright, this needs a little structure right here. Right around like that. Alright, and now, as that's all drying in various spots, I have some whiteout, Pro White. It's also called Pro White. So it's an opaque white. So if you do lose your highlights, it's not a big problem. We can come back in and let's just catch some of the highlights again. We'll just maybe pop a few down here. Here, we'll get a couple of the highlights on the branch. Sweet, look at that. Here, let's pop one right there, right over there. Highlights are always effective when you put them against something really dark. Alright, here's what I was wanting to do. Alright, this all should be fairly dry here. I'm going to come after this up here in a minute, but you can now come back in, and if you wanted to catch some of those nice little things that were in the photograph, you can just kind of bounce around, add them back in, create that textural feel. We got some really nice density happening there that you can work with. Alright, so there's some nice highlights over here, so you can come in and scrub some of those in. Featherish type marks. There we go. A little dry brush action there. And we can do the same thing over here. We got some nice base colors in there. Now the highlights will give it another layer of texture. Let's get this edge a little better. I did a pretty good job protecting that highlight edge, but boy, that's wet. Throw it right up here as well. That purple is hot. Alright, we'll throw some of it right up here. I'm going to throw it right on the beak right there. Boom, bada bing. Maybe a bit of it right there. And it comes right up into this area. There we go. Okay, so still just bouncing around, just painting textures, getting it to read right. There's a really good hot highlight edge right along this side. We're doing pretty good. Alright, and then on the feet, we got all sorts of little spots of highlight. We can come in here and just do a little drawing with highlights. Create some of these shapes. There we go. This one has a real hot highlight right there. Get that claw right there. Comes in. There's the foot. Up, need more paint. There we go. That happens a lot. There we go. Come on. I want you to taper. There we go. Alright, cool. Okay, any others? Yeah, there's some nice ones. I can need to throw a bit more of it. When it gets too thin, it becomes not opaque enough. So just going back and getting a little more pigment on it. I'm going to get that highlight right along that edge. Right there and right there. Perfect. All right. Throw one right down there. All right, I'm going to pop one right on the eye right there. It's drying. It's away from the eye now, so I can come in. I just want to punch that shape around the eye and recapture that shape. All right. A little more aggressive with it down there. And right in here. So, yeah, over the years, working with markers and gouache and watercolor, you develop a whole visual vocabulary on what you can do with your techniques. And given enough time, they'll all look pretty cool. You just be persistent. Don't give up on anything you want to learn and figure out. And there we go. We're getting there. And this is something, you can fuss around with this forever. Especially all these little highlights right there. Let's say we throw one right there. I'm even putting them where they aren't in the photograph just because they read right. There we go. Oh, there's one right over here. I got to get this. I'm going to recapture that little tuft right there. Cool. And you can see all the fun stuff is when you're sitting here fussing around with all the little spots of contrast and the highlights. That's when everything really pulls together and starts to pop. I see a couple spots I need to wrap up with a little darker. Again, I'm working with the Payne's Gray right there. All right, now let's see what we can do. So where I was doing all the real hot highlights, now I'm just going to come back in and reinforce some of the really dark darks. I need to get this beak, that purple kind of softened that beak up a little bit. And I'm going to come right around this eye again on the top side now. Perfect. And I'm just going to punch up my contrast a bit. Any others? It's still wet. Look at that. That is really damp there. All right. Throw a few more out here. And I think for about 40 minutes, that's reading pretty good. Oh, here's another fun stuff. All right, you get to this point, you go, wow, what can I do? Here, let me get my bigger brush. Doesn't matter what color. You could actually come in and start doing some fun stuff like that. Just adding some splatters. Or That's dried nice. There's some really nice colors in there. I'm going to get some more of that again. That's going to have to dry for a few minutes. And here we're going to get aggressive. I think let's get a little more of a yellow ochre. That's a little better. And we'll do another glaze. We'll just throw a little more color right in through here. Yep. Hardly anything. There we go. We'll just ramp that up. Glazing like this, when you go into saturation in Photoshop. You're starting to saturate your image up. So that's really wet. So here, let's throw a little bit of it over here. Uh-oh, I just lost my splatter. Dang it. All right. So there we go. We have a nice little bird done in watercolor fairly quickly. There we go. So voila, that's it. I think I even beat my time, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
So there you go. That was my tutorial that I conducted for a bunch of high school kids. And I thought it was kind of fun and it went together really well. So if you got any value out of this tutorial, please give me a like and a subscribe. Head over to the video description. There's all sorts of links and affiliate links, downloads, things you can find on my website. And if you think I'm doing anything worth a hoot on this channel and you want to support me financially, head over to my Patreon page and give me a $5 a month membership. Your financial support means a lot, helps me to improve the equipment I'm using and keep me going and working and developing these tutorials that everybody can enjoy. So I'll see you in the next demo.